Museum. I'm glad that you're here today. We have a great show for you today. This is called Something New, Jersey. And this is the second part. We did this last week on Sunday at three terrific poets, and I know we have three fantastic poets today. Our poets today are Reggie Gaines, Megha Sood, and Frank Messina. What we do here is we celebrate our great state in terms of poetry. I'm going to begin with a poem by Teresa Carson. And Teresa is a person who originated this idea along with me about, 7, 8, maybe 9 years ago. Anyway, I'm going to read a poem from her book, Elegy of the Floater. This is a book that was published by Carey Press. Last week I read a poem by her, and I'm doing it again. This is called Summation. Gotta give me 1 minute. Gotta put my reading glasses on. I don't know why I'm always fooled by this. Thank you again, Carey Press, for the 9-point or whatever it is type.
Learn it by heart. I'm telling you, in 1991 day, I got up at the New York and I was like, I can't read out of this.
And the rest is history.
The rest is history.
Summation. Snowstorm, 2 a.m., Journal Square. 15-year-old me who'd missed the last Bergen bus, huddled in the glove shop entrance. No point in calling home for help. My mom's sleeping, my pop gone, who knows where. The unlit streets too dangerous in blinding snow. Better to wait for daybreak, where some signs of life in sight. Beat cops, barflies, lovers, and the lunchbox toting swing shift grunts who spilled from screeching trains. The boy, about my age, ducked in, bummed a cigarette. Stick around. Drunken mom threw him out. No gloves, no hat. Had planned to steal my pocketbook. Hated when people wrote him off as worthy or hopeless trash. By 5 a.m., my cig supply was running low. We passed one back and forth until the filter burned. A cop, could be your dad, nightstick raised, half stepped into our space. Okay in there? Young lady? Yes, sir, fine. When the first bus pulled up, the boy, whose name and face I don't remember, kissed my frozen hands, then looked me in the eye. Little one, be careful talking to strangers. His straight back turned down 7. 1 block from my stop to 111. Trudged through drifts up to my knees, but didn't fall. No light left in our top floor rooms. By then my face, hands, feet, and chest so far past numb, I feared they'd never thaw. Teresa Carson. Okay, let's get on with the main event and our poets. Reggie Gaines is a poet, playwright, director, lecturer, and artistic director of the Downtown Urban Arts Festival in New York City since 2007. This 2-time Tony Award-winning musical, Bring in the Noise, Bring in the Funk. Reg is the author of 4 books of poetry, including The Original Buckwheat and Abstract Sax. He is a former Nuyorican Poets Cafe Grand Slam champ and appears in numerous poetry anthologies, including Bum Rush the Page, the Patterson Literary Review, Aloud, Voices from the Nuyorican Poets Cafe, and A Year in Ink. Ray recorded 2 poetry albums, Please Don't Take My Air Jordans and Sweeper, Don't Clean My Streets, for Mercury Records. But to quote Hamlet when he's talking to Polonius in the library, that's words. Reggie Gaines has been so important and such an influence in my writing and in my life. His presence is a big part of who I am. But more importantly, he has been an influence to at least a few generations of poets over the course of time. Reggie Gaines is a major American poet. Let's have a warm, good round of applause for Reggie Gaines. What, do you want to hear in your hands?
No. Hey, Gordy, put my knees back there.
Use the mic.
Oh, you can't hear me? Check. Okay, so, thank you all for coming. I'm going to begin with a poem by one of New Jersey's most important poets, publishers, and poetry enthusiasts, Danny Schott. And it's good that we're all here together, not for fame or fortune, but just words. We love language, like it's, where's my brain dead rotation device? The digital devices that we all love and seem attached to, it still doesn't beat our ability to communicate through use of language. All right? So anyway, Danny has the most remarkable book of poetry. Actually, I'm not gonna say remarkable, miraculous. He sent me a copy, it's called Works. All right, he sent me a copy, and the first thing that I live in San Diego. So the first, hey, hi. I forgot your name, but I know you. Yes, I know you. Oh, anyway. He sent me the book. I'm in California reading the book, and the book was so great, it made me miss New Jersey. Jersey City. How do you miss Jersey City? Right? If you think about it, he's got a poem about leaving New York City on the path after 2 o'clock in the morning and the madness that goes on in the 9th Street pass station. Then he has a poem. I love the whole book. He has a poem called Allison. And the minute I read it, I said, I have to learn this by heart. Right? That's how beautiful it was. Reason that I found it was a text message. It's a text message he sent to someone. But when I just had to learn. And so I called him, I said, I'm gonna learn your poem, Dan, but can I make some slight alterations? The nerve, right? Now think about it, the audacity. I wanna make some alterations to this poem that I love. So the words would fit in my mouth, all right? He said, okay, so here we go. Called Allison by Danny Schott from Works. Felt bad today, telling you Kanye's Bound 2 is the worst song ever. You said you really liked it, said no more than that, though I know you were annoyed. Went home, listened again and again and again. Did not watch the video, just listen. Still don't love it. Don't hate it either. Realize being young or not too old means listening with fresh ears. Hearing truth and beauty someone else hears. Somehow I'd forgotten. Thanks for the reminder, Danny. So, it says a little a little blurb I saw. I was going to read Amiri Baraka, but I had to do that because, can I just ask you one more thing? Could you please, any of you who don't know him, it's because you're not into poetry. Any of you do know him, we're going to applaud him again, because if you know him, you know why. Now I'm going to read a poem by Amiri Baraka that he's been going since 2014, but he would have written this poem after the Will Smith Chris Rock slap. He would have written this. And it's called, well, it's loosely titled Incriminating Negro Grabs. What does that mean? Incriminating Negro Grabs. Okay, here we go. Okay, shuffle. Stinking neon, lying lights, betray before millions, assassinate with slogans. Not old Toms, but new Toms, double Toms, a Tom Macoute. Fresh zombies, house Negro maniacs, Oreo serial killers. This thumping, this sound, it's not music, not drums, it's shuffling. Not old Toms, new Toms, double Toms, a Tom Macoute. Fresh zombies, okay? Shuffle. And this is by then 16-year-old Fannie Mania, who was a member of the Patterson East Side High School, what's their mascot name? Ghostwriters. So it was the Patterson East Side Ghost, that was their mascot, but they were the Ghostwriters. She was 16, 10th grade, and she was chosen from 5,000 16-year-old students around the country to be included in an MTV thing called Somewhere in America about gun violence. She was one of 5 out of 5,000. And this is what she wrote, sitting on, and she filmed it sitting on her back steps in Patterson, New Jersey, as the ice and snow melted at her feet. Damn. You cop looking for trouble because you think you hard, a gun in your hand like a psycho retard, shooting bullets at innocent ones who don't know you or where you come from. It's not the fire or the scent of the burst you feel with your finger in one little burst. 2 dead, 3 dead, and you ought to blame, but you could care less because you got that fame, that power, that glory of having that juice. As long as you up there, the hell with the truce. That could create peace in the world of trouble. The reality is, you only killed for the couple. But a couple's enough to land you in jail, and this time around, there won't be no bail. So you better think fast before you go blast. Because the next move you make just might be your last. 16 years old. So this is for my niece. I'm going to read some of my poems. This is for my niece, Gordy, who's the epitome of digital. All right? She's the epitome of digital. Okay. Why do we feel need to be seen? Obscene obsession, constant connection. Tablets, laptops, snapshots of self. Brain dead devices focus on faces. Multiple moments, plethora of places. Again and then when none know why, devotion of some to become number one. Hits, likes, comments below. Stalking ourselves, now our own prey. Selfishly snapping salacious selfies, bedrooms, bathrooms, 10 times a day. Gleaming by cuspids, dimples and cheeks, sneaking, peeking, freaks of an industry paid from our vein. Inconsequential image insane. Semi-nude, extensions in hair, faces distorted glare while we dare. Quickly share how we appear. Now the voyeur, no sign of fear. Diamond in nose adhere to oppose. Infinite intimacy with friends and foes. Influenced by what we think others see. Look at ourselves. Can it be we? Or simply some of what's in what's not? Sending, trending in hopes, photos hot. Standing mirror, reflection gone. Vainglorious vampires long to live on. Can one judge self without one's heart? Hits, likes, comments start with flick of switch, androids click. Some say simple, some say sick. Automatons dictate existence, algorithms, data, statistics. In this virtual world we seem to deem real, moments of clarity, devices don't feel. They steal our soul, control what we are. In hindsight, everybody's not a star. And now, I don't think a day goes by that the melody of Sly Stones is Everybody's a Star doesn't come every day. Da 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 ba 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 every day. Okay, so I don't know this poem that I'm getting ready to say. It's not a poem, it's a monologue. I don't know it, but I'm going to say it. And if I stop and segue into something else, because I forgot, because I'm getting older, and like everybody in this room, there's a war going on against Alzheimer's and dementia. And so I hope y'all are preparing, figuring out a way. This is a muscle, y'all. It's a muscle like this, like this.
Yeah.
The whole, if you ain't working it, you're gonna lose it. You gotta figure out what's the best way for you to do it, right? But you gotta do it. It makes all of us better, but you gotta do it. Like, we should all, we should be all in the army against Alzheimer's and dementia. It's the worst thing. Now this, read the goddamn poem. Now this is the opening monologue of a show I'm writing and probably gonna perform in with Savion Glover called Cracking the Code. And it's about his life. And which is it's a tough nut to crack. Because the people who wanna spend money, they have an idea of what his life is. They don't know this guy, they just wanna spend money so they can sell tickets and make more money and buy yachts and become American oligarchs or whatever. Is that the word?
Yeah.
So anyway, but if I do stop, it's because brain ain't gotta get right. And thank you all for coming. And to Frank and to, how do you say your name again?
Megha.
Say it in slowly.
Megha.
It's silent. The G is there a G there?
Yeah.
So the G is silent.
Yes.
That's what, see, this dimension now. I saw your name right. I'm not saying this right. I'm not saying so.
Thank you.
So it's no G. Megha.
Yeah.
Check me out. Savion Glover's live communication arrives on the island of Jamaica in late 1998. 5 tap dancers, jazz quartet, tech crew, poet. Shows are scheduled for Mobay in Kingston, with the final performance taking place at the Little Theater. We are animals. Black country, crystal blue waters, where 50-year-old fishing boats jockey for position with souped-up jet skis. Salted codfish, galaloo, aki, Suzanne Couch's legendary Jack's Hill Road New Year's Eve party, ganja forever. Incognito, the aptly titled band, begins with an Afro-Cuban twins version of Juan Tizal and Duke Ellington's Perdido. Savion segues into swirling dervish mode as his taps explode across every square inch of that very tiny stage. I wait in the stage right wings, counting bars, contemplating what poem I'll spit to set off the second scene. The Jamaican audience, though obviously not familiar with Savion's music and style of tap, knows rhythm. At or about 128 bars, the sound of metal grinding against metal erupts. Every light sans the exit signs left, right, and center disappear. The band stops. I can barely see my fingers in front of my face. Savion continues. How can he see? Perhaps he's an intuitive mathematical genius, able to survey the circumference of the stage with a single glance. My hearing, more acute in darkness, senses Savion's sound sliding right. Louder and louder, closer than closer, it seems as if I can snatch the tap's echoes. Finally, he's but a few feet away. Tap volume lowers, Savion whispers at the top of his lungs. Reg, get the ball. I can't see. Follow the sound of my feet. I gingerly step, hoping not to trip and slip from the lip of the stage. Savion's sound slides right and suddenly shifts forward, creating a Miles Davis-like silence. My words ride the rhythmless void. Everybody wants to help you out. Everybody wants to be your friend. Everybody wants to free the fright at the end of the funnel. Savion creates a series of swirls, snares, slaps, a polyrhythmic percussive potpourri which accentuate the words. Everybody wants to be or not to be left out in the cold. Everybody wants to act like they told you so when you ain't heard shit. At poem's end, Savion begins to escort me back to stage right. Less apprehensive, I still extend my arm to ward off invisible obstacles. Finally, my finger feels the coarse curtain. I tap sweat from my brow, count bars and breathe to Savion's beat. The pianist's fingers trickle across the keys. Bass creates a funkified reggae groove. Drum and sax follow suit. I wonder why they stopped in the first place. I mean, who can see better in the dark than finely tuned jazz musicians? Savion is once again in full flight. At 64 bars, there's a muffled explosion as lights intermittently reappear. The Jamaican audience, as if on cue, rise, giving Savion a standing ovation, which seems to last as long as the time spent in darkness. We later learned it was 17 minutes. A magical, mystical, musical moment created by the brilliance of Savion.
Nice.
I remembered it. And you don't memorize it. For all of us in here, with public speakers or poets, whatever. The thing is, you have to feel comfortable when you're here. Like when you're up in front of people, you have to feel comfortable. And it's never nervousness. It's anxiety. For one reason and one reason only. You want to be liked. You want to do good. But that's the shit that gets in the way. It's about the work. Now, no matter how that sounded to you or whatever pictures it may have put in your head, for me, it was the work. First, remembering the actual experience and then choosing what is the best imagery to help tell that story. Because it's just not words. For me, poetry, but nowadays, if I listen to poetry or read poetry and it doesn't put pictures in my head and it's not efficient, it's no good. But that means it's no good for me. It does, so I can't say John Ashbery's poetry is not this, and I can't say Gwendolyn Brooks' poetry is not, that's what it has to do for me. Or Rescue Poetic, that's what Frank Messina, that's what it has to do to me. I'm not hating. I'm not hating at all. It's like, yo, that's how I deal with it. That's how I learn. That's how it affects me. The beauty comes through in pictures. If there's the camera, there's the flat screen. If it's coming in and not putting the picture here, I don't mess with it. I do not hear. Is this poetry? This is poetry for me. Patty cake, I'm the baker's man. I bake them cakes as fast as I can. And you can tell by how my bread stacks up and disguise it is wrapped so the feds back up. Watch it like my whip, like my chick topless, doing a $1.6 with me in the cockpit. Grinding, cousin, I got holes for a dozen, even 11.5 if I see you keep it coming. And my weight, that's just as heavy as my name. So much dough, I can't swear I won't change. Excuse me if my wealth got me full of myself. Copy something that I just can't help. Especially when them 20s are spinning like wind to hit. Especially poetry. Especially when them 20s are spinning like windmills. 32 below minus. Who knows what I just said? Who knows what I just hit? Who? Spinning like windmills. What's spinning like windmills? It's not a poetry, but tell us. Tell me, just shout it out. What am I talking about?
Talk about rims.
But that's talking about what?
Rims.
How many of y'all in the room know what rims are? How many don't know what rims are? Tell them what rims are.
Rims are your tires.
Tires. So now all of a sudden, the poetry I speak, the poetry I see in the project, Jackson Avenue, or where, North New Jersey, East LA, is poetry in the language where I live. Especially when them 20s are spinning like wind. What an image. Especially when them 20-inch rims. Especially when them 20s are spinning like windmills. Whoa, 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 whoa. And the ice, 32 below, but 32 below minus wind chill. Now who wrote that shit? This was a 17-year-old kid from Richmond, Virginia. Moms and pops, pops wasn't around, all welfare, turns his poetry into song, and now he's got a $10 million home in South Beach. 32 below minus. So that's poetry to me. Danny's poetry to me. William Shakespeare's poetry to me. Frank Messina's poetry. My niece Gordy is poetry. She just drove me here from West Orange, New Jersey, in her brand new electric Tesla, right? And just the whole thing with the screen. I don't have no Tesla. I'm not in that world. And just her whole movement, her gait, her confidence, like it's poetic. It was poetic. All right, watching her like maneuver. Of course, I'm proud of her. She's my niece and she's family. I love her. But the whole idea is that just her poetic. Gordy, stand up. Everyone, please look at her. Please. That's poetic. That's poetry back there. So I'll finish with this, because I know I'm hogging up the mic, but that's the way we live. Oh, this is Trey, everybody. He's doing a documentary called Instant Art. And if we have to put the camera on, you'll ask you a question, just tell them the truth. You know, it's gonna be a big thing. It's gonna be a huge thing. Okay, I'll finish with something short. And what we both are from yesterday. I didn't go over 5 minutes yesterday. I did not. I was 4 minutes and 57 seconds. Not with every,
You're the only one in our group.
But see, that's another thing. These poets, and if you get any notoriety or a writer or a poet, you get any kind of fame, you still gotta follow the rules. So we got 30 poets gonna read, everybody's got 5 minutes apiece, and they all just like, forget that, I'm better than that, I'm bigger than that. And yet I went out of my way to learn 4 minutes and 57 seconds of something by heart, little excerpts and pieces of stuff, so I wouldn't go over.
Everyone promised me the exact same beforehand.
Choo-choo! Right, okay, so anyway, and I did this little excerpt from a much longer poem because I know Steve loved it. I didn't say anything. Yeah, what I'm doing now, you can't preface it if you got 5 minutes. How many people out there press it? The one thing that Steve didn't want any of us to ever be is to read the goddamn poem. Shut up and read the poem. Right? Everybody who got up together, my nickname is Scarface because when I was 12, I fell off the back of this truck and I got this scar and I got these stitches and I went to school and everybody was Scarface, read the goddamn poem. So I did an excerpt of this because Steve loved it, but also because I wrote it in 1991.
When you say Steve, Steve who?
Steve Cannon, I'm sorry, Professor Steve Cannon. But I wrote this in 1991 when it was a hot topic, but I read it because Steve always liked it. And Steve said to me once, like, yo, you think anybody will give a shit about him 30 years from now? That's what he said to me. Okay, I'm here. Who am I talking about? You son of a Georgia sharecropper, the brand Nubian showstopper, flip-flopping from left to right, Afro-Saxon fly-by-night, and we know your wife's white. Woulda, coulda, shoulda been like Thurgood, a man who took a stand, but don't be mistaken. Aching truth is, Thomas, the burnt English muffin, wants to do his Bojangles shuffling on the Supreme Court, but homie don't play that Judge Boy shit, so the muffin's gonna have a fit trying to get in. Then I've segued into another little low IQ haiku, number 92 for Steve Cannon, right? But he was right. Look at Clarence Thomas right now, his wife, the Supreme Court, abortion, Roe v. Steve was right. And he also told me this message for all you, and I'm leaving. Outlast the competition. Outlast your competition. That's what you do to make a way in the world. That means dementia, work on it, your diet, flexibility, whatever you gotta do, outlast the competition. Because if you got something great to give to the world, you can't give it unless you're dead. Because only a few of us get over after we're gone. All right, peace. Love y'all.
Reggie Gaines, isn't he fantastic? Okay, I'm not going to do toe touches to show you my flexibility. And actually, Steve was wrong because unfortunately, we still do give a shit about Clarence Thomas, not for the right reasons, but that's another story. Okay. 20 minutes ago, I would have mispronounced her name. Being I'm from New Jersey, it's Megha. Unless you were humoring Reggie. Megha Sood is a Pushcart-nominated, award-winning poet, editor, author, and literary activist based in New Jersey, USA. She is an associate editor at Mookie Life and Legends, and literary partner in the project Life in Quarantine with Stanford University. Advocacy member of United Nations Association. Her works featured in journals including Poetry Society of New York, NPR, WNYC Studios, PBS, American Portrait, American Writers Review, Kissing Dynamite, Rising Phoenix Review, and many more. She is the author of the chapbook, My Body Is Not an Apology, and I'm going to show it to you. Which was published by Flower Song Press this year, 2022. She is the co-editor of anthologies The Medusa Project, Mookie Chick, and the Cali Project. She's a recipient of a Poet Fellowship 2021, Martha's Vineyard Institute of Creative Writing, 2020 National Level winner Spring Mahogany Lit Prize, and 3-time state level winner of New Jersey Poetry Contest. She's the recipient of Certificate Excellence from Mayor Stephen Fulop in Jersey City. Performing venues include New York Poetry Festival, Patterson Poetry Festival, New Eurekan Poets Cafe, Hudson County Community College, Historic Apple Tree House, and many more. Her blogs are at megasworldsite.wordpress.com. I'm going to ask her to explain. I know her poems have made their way into space somehow, and I'm not sure how, but I know Megha knows how. Let's have a warm, welcoming round of applause for Megha Sood.
Thanks everyone for coming here. It's an absolute honor and pleasure to perform with Reggie Gaines and Cena. And I'm so thankful to Danny Short for giving me this opportunity. So before we start reading, I'm just gonna give the answer to the question. So The project is basically, it's one of the artistic projects, one of the contemporary art projects in collaboration with NASA and SpaceX. So in addition to like sending the people back to space again in moon, like on 2024, it's called the Artemis mission. They're also sending the artworks and everything in 3 digital capsules, and in the year 2022, 23, and 24. So they are basically the collection of artworks and poetry, and they are curating the works of 6,000 creatives and 1 AI in 3 different capsules, and they are like Peregrine, Nova, and Polaris. So one of the anthology which I edited for the Movie Check, which is a UK-based press, and it's an anthology. It's celebrating the 100 years of the suffragist movement, and it represents the work of 50 plus women writers all across the world, was chosen to be included as a digital payload for the Polaris capsule, which is going to be landed on the south pole of the moon. So it's an honor to be selected for the project, and I am really proud of that. So that's what the project is all about. So I'm going to be reading a few poems from my full-length collection. This is my debut full-length collection from Flower Song Press, and it's called My Body Lives Like a Thread. And most of the poems it talks about the body politics and the issues which arises out of body politics. So I'm going to start with the first poem, which is called Peace, a Metaphor for Denial. And this poem was the national level winner of 2020 Poetry Matters project. It's called Peace, a Metaphor for Denial. Peace, an act of ignorance, an act of denial, is not bliss, no more. When silence is gutted like a fish and the blood of your own fills the street. How long can you be the puppet in your own peaceful country? This act of abandonment speaks a muted language for all the hearts trapped like sparrows on the other side of town. The wall creates a boundary between me and humanity. They are still considered illegal with 1 foot in my land, another bloodied and stuck in the barbed wire that I put around God's own country. I was born with the privilege to call the piece of earth my own. No matter it is laced and seeped with someone else's blood, it belongs to me now. The young boy is shot. The pavement is stained by the color of his blood, dark and useless. To the people of this peaceful country, those who pull out the armrest and the beat chairs to see the stars light up the sky, and the deafening noise muting the wails of a widowed mother. They sip the beer as cold as their souls, leaving the scene with a shrug and a short sigh. Ignorance is bliss. Peace is a metaphor for denial. In this country, I call mine. The next one is called A Nation in a Chokehold. The streets are overcrowded. Lanes are bustling with protest, thrumming with anger, overcrowded bus stops, sidewalks, bike lanes, parks, brimming and spilling with pain, unfettered, uncontrolled. Everywhere there is quarantine, where the lanes should be deserted, where everyone should be 6 feet apart. Mask-covered mouths, but still breathing with breaths laced with privilege. Here the nation recalls the pain, the unanswered angst of those falling from the grave, for those grieving souls who are yet to be put to rest. Those headstones, now a place marker for a black mother to sit and cry alone in the deep folds of the night. Here the nation mirrors the streams of the black blood lacing the sidewalks, mouth gaping at the nakedness of the whole nation, staring back at the end of a gun, a police gun. Where the nation acknowledges the police shooting went awry. Where the nation recalls how the protectors devour. Where the nation recalls how easy it is for you to forget a loss of life and wait for the next new cycle to begin. Where the nation recalls how eyes pop out, losing life in an instant. When your brain misses the next wave of life-giving air coursing through your veins. Thick blood staining the curbside of the lands we boisterously own. the nakedness of humanity, staring through the gaping hole in his chest, shot in broad daylight in this middle of the goddamn market. We turn our eyes in shame, move our heads in disbelief, and thank our gods in heaven to spare our loved ones, the ones we love. And the nation recalls how to survive by sucking in, gulping air, taking deep, long breaths feverishly, trying to survive after being in the chokehold for 8.5 minutes. Yet the nation remembers Eric Garner, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. Yet the nation learns again how to breathe freely. The next one is called Does Hurt Have a Gender? And I really want the audience to listen to it intently because it poses a question to the readers that does hurt have a gender? What does a body want when it breaks down into a million pieces? Its pulverized existence wanting acceptance, only to be ignored and walked over, left over like day-old milk on the kitchen counter, forgotten and left to curdle. Why do we keep numbing the sharp pain, the knotted lamentation caught in our hungry mouths, that cuts our soul both ways and leaves us to bleed in this world, profused with sweat and blood, a moment indescribable, leaking and soaking the ridges of the curbside, hair, the thickness of your blood, its viscosity, and the gravitas of your speech depends on the color of your skin, a pain untenable. An insurmountable pain rising in my mouth, a dichotomy between pain and acceptance, a desire, abominable. Do screams have a religion too? Do cries have a race? Does hurt have a gender? Do wounds have a nationality? Does your tongue curl into sin when you call out my name? Does the triteness of your ideology still mollify your pain? The next poem is called Demarcation, and it's a reflection on the broken prison system of the United States of America, where people of colors are unproportionately incarcerated. Demarcation. That frail evening marking the shadows of the long summer days, a bird perched on the barbed wires of the prison, demarcating happiness and the grief, acceptance and rejection, solitude and bouts of laughter, the prisoner and the free. The arresting height of that boisterous wall whose bricks are soaked with the crackling wails and sobs of the broken souls neatly carved and plastered, a bizarre tinge of the ochre, peeling off from the walls and the tears flow incessantly through bleary eyes as they gaze from emptiness to nothing. Silence curled in hollow bones, rattling with rage, palms holding out for someone, something, for forgiveness, a fleeting touch of humanity, a soft, supple touch of love, a day wrapped around the promises of second chances, silhouette of the loved ones appearing between the thick bars, a pleasant sight for the cracked and pale eyes. Death and silence are interchangeable. Go ask the bird as it sits at the barbed wire fence, keeping the two realms separate. A socially justifiable demarcation between the cacophony and the melody, the symmetry and the dissonance, between the pristine and the ostracized. How thin is the separation between love and acceptance, despair and second chances, between judged and forgiven. The next is called false ownership, and this is by the violation. This is based on the violation of the reproductive rights based on the Hartford bill. False ownership. This is strangely annoying when you see arrogance in someone who doesn't own a thing, can't conjure a thing out of thin air, let alone a human are just the render here. You don't own shit. You are born from this womb that cradles your existence for months, a sliver away from all the being. Nothing but a pulsating existence in a foreign body. Sometimes the body treats it like an infection to keep away the contamination, self-purging, an act of reclamation. Sometimes it accepts, cups its own palm, supports you, carries it to term. It's the body, the arrangement, the unsaid understanding, the solemn promise between the body and its identity. Your existence is slowly molded like a bag of sagging clay on the pot of beans, morphed and molded to be called a human being. You don't own the womb. You definitely don't own our bodies. You break the rearrangement just like to possess the things. Let me clear this for the sake of your understanding. The body is not for your taking. There's a thin line between the choices we make and your wanting. The next poem is called Mouth, and it's basically an ode to the mouth, an organ basically which speaks of lust and which is an epicenter for gluttony. Mouth. A mouth is an entry point. It speaks of hunger, speaks of lust, the urgency of something more sacred than the hymns under muted breath, speaks of the violence the bodies endure, a gaping wound for a broken soul, an unspoken lexicon of silence, but misheard and misunderstood. Desires birth within it. Anything that catches our attention needs to be validated by our mouths. The epicenter of gluttony, the protagonist of the original sin. The desirous taste should sit well before we can call it our own. We call a lot of things our own. We desire, we possess the most untamed of all senses. A shiny trinket catches our attention and the slurping desire starts building. We are the creatures of the mouth. We are creatures of wanting. The next poem is an ode to all the poets and writers out here who basically go through a lot of struggles of voicing their own experience and giving it a shape and putting it out on paper. And it's the internal struggle that they have to go through for catharsis and for self-expression. It's called resistance. I don't wait for you to corroborate my truth, evidence to prove the finality of my desires. I don't wait for your soft touches to smooth my scars, a tourniquet to stop this bleeding. I don't want you to comfort me in the middle of the night only to unravel my pain in the morning. As my body goes from a shade darker than yesterday, I don't need the assurance of the revolution around the corner. I birth my own revolution and I create my own marches. The truth my soul owes to nobody but me. A conversation with my higher self, a divine evolution. When I resist, I create.
Yeah.
The next poem is called My Body is Not an Apology, and it's a title poem from my chapbook, which was published last year by Finishing Line Press. My body is not an apology. This body, my body, is not an apology. It's a prayer. Forgiveness wrapped in the filigree end of my skin, frayed at the ends, battered for so long by your pointy convictions and cookie-cutter rules that try to shape and mold this body along. My body is not an apology. It doesn't desire to fit in a frame mapped inch by inch and still be ashamed. My body is not an apology. It's a role, a declaration, an unapologetic, unabashed, straight-in-your-face truth, a war cry, a deafening scream from the silence. My body is not an apology. This body will not be mapped as a benchmark for beauty, an attempt to hide crow's feet or the spider wings from your wild eyes and your forked tongue. My body is not an apology, but a safe haven, an epitome of affection, a metaphor for crimson love that flows in my veins for years to come. My body is not an apology. It's an eye of the storm, a dance of destruction, a safe haven for life, forgiveness in disguise. With love, neatly folded in the wrinkles of my skin, warmth oozing from every pore of my being, a lesson etched in every single crow's feet, forgiveness written through every inch of me. This body is not an apology. It is a profound lesson, a triumphant proclamation, an unfettered declaration. Thank you. So the next poem is called My Survival Story, and it was one of the state level winning poems from the Nami and Jedara poetry contest. My Survival Story. The slow cleaving in my backbone, a seamless transformation, branching into my thousand cells like a sapling breaking from the blind seed. I'm sprouting, I'm thriving, growing like a Medusa, the fecundity of myself, breaking out into 1,000 versions of me, morphing into shapes, perfecting the art of topiary. Like a reflection of the summer sun shining into 1,000,000 versions of me, on shards of broken mirror, blessing them with its apricity. I'm the war cry, the mortal fear, residing behind enemy lines, the lava, the primordial depth, creating life so sublime. I'm the knowledge in the verse, in the smattering cacophony of your mind. With inked breaths and walnut skin, boisterous, unfettered, and uncontrolled, walking barefoot on this traveled path, and schoolings like fear in its intimate corridors. My pain impaled on the stars in the nightly sky, I shine through my pulverized skin. The broken pieces I foraged together to make a whole of me, an entramming beauty within. This fecundity is my survival instinct, to handle the plethora of emotions life throws at me, undulating between the proximity and prosody of pain. I'm learning. Yes, I am growing. The next poem is basically the title poem from my full-length collection, which is called My Body Lives Like a Thread. A wound opens its mouth and becomes self-inflicting, just like the night in its extreme. Vulnerable to a ray of light, its existence challenged, and yet it stands bravely, unfettered by the challenges of the dawn. As I catch the words in my mouth, my language becomes an open threat, my razor speech falling sharp on your dull convictions. We always expose our deepest and softest parts to heal. That's how the body learns to heal, to grow. To be vulnerable is an elegy for acceptance. We have hunger written all over us, with the ink as black as mole on your shoulder, challenging the frothiness of the moonlight. My unspoken words sit like a belt on my tongue in this foreign world. Every time I twist my tongue to shape a word, I mispronounce your fear. A new thread is born. I'm going to read like 3-4 poems which are not part of this collection, and then end with the poem as an ode to Robert Pinsky. So the first poem is called Survival is an Art. What do you do with the wound that is healed? Do you count along with the scars as the soul heals and repairs, or you scrape it again, not to forget the lesson it reveals? What do you do when the broken heart heals? When it leaves the cracks like their broken vase on my mental peace with those dead lilies? What do you do with the letters written with apology and despair? Your despondent heart stops breathing or starts dreaming a new affair. What do you do when the autumn leaves, those dead rolling behind, stripped from the mighty embrace of the old chestnut, reminiscing the days so sublime. Survival is an art. We all are a living testament to this truth. A life begins after severing the umbilical cord from its root. And to close the reading, I'm going to read the poem from Robert Pinsky, who's one of America's foremost poet critics, and he was also the poet laureate to the Library of Congress from 1997 to 2000. The poem, in the words of Robert Pinsky, is poetry's highest purpose is to provide a unique sensation of coordination between the intelligence, emotions, and the body. It's one of the most fundamental pleasures a person can experience. Antique by Robert Pinsky. I drowned in the fire of having you. I burned in the river of not having you. We lived together for hours in a house of 1,000 rooms, and we were parted for 1,000 years. 10 minutes ago, we raised our children who covered the earth and have forgotten that we existed. It was not Maya. It was not a ladder to perfection. It was this cold sunlight falling on this warm earth. When I turned, you went to hell. When your ship fled the battle, I followed you and lost the world without regret, but with stormy recriminations. Someday, far down that corridor of horror, the future, someone who buys this picture of you for the frame at a stall in a dwindled city will study your face and decide to harbor it for a little while longer. From the waters of anonymity, the acids of breath.
Nice.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megha. That's terrific. I just got a copy of the book, and I look forward very much to reading this real soon, maybe tonight. Robert Pinsky, besides being a New Jersey poet, of course, is a Rutgers man, worth mentioning. It is my profound pleasure to introduce Frank Messina. I don't believe he's read in public since maybe before the pandemic, so it's really good to have him. Frank Messina is a poet, actor, and visual artist. His work has appeared in the New York Times, Beloit, I never can pronounce that word, Beloit Poetry Journal, and on NPR, PBS, and BBC. Frank first earned recognition as a poet in the 1990s as the leader of the spoken word and music group Spoken Motion. He's collaborated with musicians Cecil Taylor, David Amram, John Popper, and with members of Fish, Max Creek, and the Grateful Dead. In 2013, his 2001 poetry journal was accessioned into the permanent collection of the September 11th Memorial Museum in New York City. His baseball-related poetry was published in his best-selling book, Full Count, the Book of Mets Poetry, for real, Lions Press, earning him the team's unofficial title as the Mets poet, for real. If only they had one team. His poems have been adapted to short films and animation. As an actor, Frank has appeared in HBO's Boardwalk Empire, in Martin Scorsese's The Irishman, and in many independent films and documentaries. As a painter, his large abstract paintings hang in private and public collections worldwide. He lives in Jersey City with his son, Liam Hudson. Let's have a really warm round of applause for Frank Messina.
Appreciate it. It's great to be in Hoboken, be here at the museum. I think this is my second time reading here. It's always a pleasure, it's always an honor to be here, but especially coming outside of this long, unintended hiatus that the world has been in. So, Danny, thank you, and thanks to the museum for opening your home and your establishment up to poetry, the festival, and this important thing about sharing and caring, and the mere desire to hear poetry. So I'm really excited to be here, and I think I'll start with simply I want to hear poetry.
I know that book.
Ah, yeah, it's an oldie, but goodie, I suppose. I want to hear poetry. I want to hear poetry heave from dry mouths of pedestrians on Broadway. Read amazed, recite your women. I want to hear poetry. When I'm driving in my car, I want street signs to read. 2 roads diverge in the wood. I'll choose the way from there. I want to hear poetry. Officer, when you stopped me last night, why did you ask for my license and registration and insurance card? Why not recite verse 2, Bob Dylan's Police Dog Blues? Because it'll do for you, Mr. Officer, because, yes, I want to hear poetry. And when I'm on a date, don't patronize me with mascara and good looks. Quote a line from Frankie O'Hara or Gwendolyn Brooks. I want to hear poetry. When we're at the restaurant, we'll push today's special on me. Just serve up an entree of romantic realist cuisine, platter of Wordsworth and Coleridge, and a side of Ferlinghetti with beets, a shot of Jack Kerouac, a tumbler of Yusuf Komayaka, a snifter of Sonia Sanchez, and don't forget to put that Allen Ginsberg in a doggy bag, because I may need it later. I want to hear, I want to hear, I want to hear poetry. That we are hearing today, for sure. Reg, been so many years. I think the last time I saw you was here. But Reg and I go way back to the early and mid '90s, and it's always an honor to be on to share the bill with you. Megha, real pleasure. We enjoyed hearing your work today, and I look forward to reading your book. Reg, I don't know if you know this story, but I was performing with Larry McDonald, played with Gil Scott-Heron. And I was backstage at Gil Scott-Heron's show. This is probably 91, 92. And they were talking about you. And I was telling Gil's like, hey, Reggie Gaines, yeah. MTV and me, yeah. But, I was talking about you. And so Larry's like, yeah, man, that Rich. Larry McDonald was a percussionist for Gil Scott-Heron and Peter Tosh and many others. He's now in his 80s. And he's still out there doing his thing. We started, as Danny said, my band Smoking Motion back in 92, 93. But just bringing up Steve Cannon and all those wonderful, beautiful people that I remember. It really warms my heart to be here today.
Larry was like the most beautiful, he's still the most beautiful person on the
He
face of
is.
the earth.
He is.
What a great human being.
He's a great soul and great man. I'm going to tell him I'll see it. Sometime.
I still got a signed copy.
Yeah, you do?
Hell yeah.
You're all right. This poem I wrote a long time ago, but for some reason it seems to keep coming back. Because as years go on, it seems like things change, but some things just remain the same. Disorderly conduct. The title poem from my book, Disorderly Conduct. You're all under arrest for giving in to your oppressors. Anything you don't do or won't say can and will be used against you. You are hereby charged with complacency in the first degree, possession of ambivalence, and failing to obey a distress signal from your fellow citizens. You have the right to remain violent, shouting down the big machine with words of rage till daybreak. But instead you crouch down in silence, drinking, smoking, choking, while your own family stands on trial. You have the right to bear arms up against the cold steel face of injustice, break down barbed walls of dogma. You have the right to burn the straitjacket, the suffocating drapery, smothering your daughter's dreams. You have the right to make a left turn. You have the right not to be straight. You have the right to do the right thing, but you're all guilty of everything. You have the right to not go gentle into that good night. You have the right to fight, to break open the pale face of hatred and shut it down once and for all human race. You have the right to steal the keys to freedom's door that are dangling from tyranny's jeweled jaw. You have the right to infiltrate, to violate the multi-creator. You have the right to break in and enter. Instead, you break down and bolt, abandoning naked children that are lying, dying, crying beside crooked gates of hell. You have the right to overthrow the king whose castle's walls your own hands built. You're all guilty, 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 guilty of everything. Guilty of lethargy, guilty of medicating your life away from harsh truths that daylight brings. Guilty of talking the talk, but not walking the walk. Guilty of not working for peace. Guilty of not working for peace. Guilty of not working for peace. Get against the wall. You've been condemned and convicted by the people for your crimes against them. Look up at the sun through blindfolded eyes until it hurts you to see, and you remember those you betrayed. You remember, yes, you're guilty. I'm guilty. Guilty of everything. I haven't read that one in a while. And, sometimes the meaning comes back. You discover something new, even about your own work. That's why it's good to get out and read. I recorded an album this summer with David Amaranth and Ron Whitehead in Louisville, Kentucky. And Never Too Many Sunsets is the name of the album. Poetry and music. The great David Amaranth playing every instrument possible on the album. We recorded some of these. No preface needed, just these are some of my new poems. It's called Emotional Frostbite. I awoke to silence. I could not see. I opened my mouth. I could not speak. I felt my chest, but no heartbeat. Scared, I dressed, walked to the river, in search of my heart, in search of my voice. I found a stone to sit, and I reflected, and I remembered. Years ago, in this very spot, my heart fell straight out of my chest, swollen, liquidly tumbled down the rocks. Ventricles separated, a trail of clotted blood on the foam. And I remembered my eye sockets burned shut, ears plugged. I remembered my eye sockets burned shut. Yes, ears plugged. And I remember curling up to the roots of the tree and sleeping for 5, 10, 15 years, content in my own solitude, consumed with emotional frostbite, guided by ghosts, spirit ancestors, poem brothers and sisters. In that slumber, I had visions pointing to New York Harbor, visions of Walt Whitman pointing to New York Harbor. But today there is sunshine, there is love. There is a little boy tugging at my shirt, pointing to the harbor. And it is not Walt Whitman. It is not a ghost from my past. It is my son. And I regained my eyesight. And with these new eyes, I see my heart. There it is. On the phone. No longer separated, but one big pulsing heart. I reach out and grab the clouding mass and pull it back in my chest. I hear the birds, water licking the shore. I take son's hand. We walk home, thawed, gone, and cured from years of emotional frostbite. My heart swells for you. My heart swells for you. It breaks for you. It mends and breaks again for you. My heart swells for you. You walked into Cornelius Street Cafe, caught my eye, my heart, soul. A photographer, you told me, but with dreams of joining the New York City Fire Department. In love, we conceived a child, Liam Hudson, middle named after the river which separated us. And you carried him through the rigors of the fire academy, waking at 4 a.m. for military-style training. My heart aches for you. It longs for you, tender, it remains for you. My heart breaks for you. At the graduation ceremony, a bump showed in the center of your uniform. Your first days at work, you and our child saving lives. When pandemic nightmare ran its psychotic course and took you away, I was left with no choice but to care for our child, alone. My heart swells for you. It mends and breaks again for you. My heart swells for you. Mornings filled with ambiguous grief, with the joy of a beautiful child and the belief in the power of love. My heart aches for you. It longs for you, tender, it remains for you. My heart swells for you. My heart sings for you, windswept, unkempt, unbridled through God's road path. My heart aches for you. It longs for you, tender, it remains for you. My heart beats for you. Beats for you. My heart swells for you. Ode to extremities. Oh, my spread-toed grippers, tender treaders, hardy steppers, stampers in the daily dance. My left one, my right one, knuckled old servants, veined and vulnerable. I greet you and celebrate you, and now stand and bear the weight of this hanghead. Stood up, they call it. After you two, steady here, holding me, mate beside mate, you know what we'll do, old ruggeds? We'll all walk away. Oh, my spread-toed grippers, tendy treaders, hardy steppers, stampers in the daily dance, my left one, my right one, knuckled in servants, veined and vulnerable, I greet you and celebrate you who now stand and bear the weight of this hanghead. Stood up, they call it. After you two, steady here, holding me, mate beside me. You know what we'll do, old ruggeds? We'll all walk away. Portrait of an artist. Welcome, she says, with her bright bulk and intelligent eyes. Come to my shack, you human beings, you, for I know what it is to be human. Yes, she is wise. Large and wise in her terry cloth sweater, black and yellow striped and dungarees with 20 pockets. Colors are her serious love affair. But no matter what the temporary color of her hair, always unmistakable hair, her brown, alive eyes tell you how much she sees about each one of us. and how good a joke life possibly is, among other things. Down to earth, she calls it, an earth including tidal pools, anemones, and rock. She paints. She has been to Byzantium and Bleecker Street and Brooklyn and Berlin, and she says, come in. My brother's girl. She's a brown-eyed, blonde, sallow-skinned, like a half-Italian girl I knew in Jersey City, or the dusty young trees on Central Avenue. That had to be strong to grow there, sending out shoots of pale green each spring. Yeah, she says softly, looking at him with a half smile. Yeah. Let's sing of every frail, tough, tender thing that thrives a while. For Billie Holiday. So many laments for Bird. But what about Billie? Vinegar, velvet. The tight wire husk with pain threading high and through the flowing fiber of her song, the fine, insinuating arrows, honey dip, grainy, yet soaring and sour and traveling true, bullseye into the gut, bullseye into the gut, bullseye into the gut, twisting there in the warm beat. Oh, sure, champion, elegant lady. Oh, sure, champion, elegant lady. Lulled at last, sleep easy.
Nice.
The last 4 poems I read were by Lillian Martin, Jersey City poet, a daughter of Russian immigrants, who born in 1917. I discovered her book in a dive bar in Jersey City, and it sort of changed my life. You know, she kind of reached out and grabbed me, and I feel bad because I never knew of Lillian Martin before. And when Danny asked to read a Jersey poet, I immediately knew who I had to read. And it was Lillian Martin. And her book that I have here that I found is called The Ghosts of Jersey City. It's a beautiful book. And like Reg talked before about photographs, about imagery, her poems are just bursting with this imagery, energy. And here was this, kind of shy librarian who worked with New York Public Library, and she watched the men play stickball in the streets and do all these kind of, men things, and she would observe this and kind of long for it in a way, and she had she was around before rock and roll, and her poems, I thought Bob Dylan wrote something. It's amazing. He must have read her stuff. He must have. But she hung out in all these places, in the village and stuff, back in the 50s and 60s, early 60s. And she was already, like deep into her, 50s and 60s and 70s, when, 50s and 60s when Dylan was in his 20s. She's pre-rock and roll, and she wrote an ode to Billie Holiday long before Gil Scott-Heron wrote, Lady Day and John Coltrane. And some of the work you hear today seems derivative of this. Who is this Lillian Morrison? This brilliant poet. I suggest everyone find a book and get it. They're like little photographs. The poems are beautiful. So I wanted to share them. I didn't want to tell you before I did it because I actually see some of my work in her work. It's amazing. So I discovered something beautiful. I've been in Jersey City for 20-something years, and I never knew of Lillian. So I feel kind of bad. She wrote about baseball. And long before, she wrote about baseball longer than the Mets have been in existence, in 1962, I believe. And she wrote about the Mets long before I did. So, she's already writing about the stuff that I had to go my entire life to discover in my own head. And being a fan. And I could have just read her stuff. I didn't have to be a pained Mets fan my whole life. You know, I could have just read her stuff. I said, there it is. Wow. But you know, it's funny how that happens. So it's one of the reasons why I love Jersey City. It's one of the reasons why I love poetry too. I'm always poets were always my friends. Who growing up in school, I was always thrown out of class at school, and I'd go to the principal's office, and my notebook became my friend. You know, I'd write what was on my mind. This is when I was in 7th, 8th grade. But then I'd go to the library and it was poems. That's how I discovered, Kerouac. I mean, I who's Jack Kerouac? I ever talk about on the road, right? There's poems. I discovered his poems. And nobody talks about his poems. So poetry has saved my life on many occasions, and I'm not going to get too into it now. It's really in my poems, I think. And I'll finish off with one more piece. I think I'm good on time. Right? Pieces. I think might as well do a baseball piece. Why not? Right? We have some sports fans here in general. Right? So, but Lillian wrote about not just baseball, but football, basketball, and stickball. And if you read her poems, you'll see these observances of the human condition in 1930s, 40s, 50s Jersey City. You know, and it's I want to make a film of her work. I do. I want to make a feature film on her work, but really her life. Maybe it's threading her poems, little vignettes, maybe that sort of thing. But it's beautiful. It's very cinematic. So anyhow, I'm just kind of thinking of I'm like freestyling like that stuff. You know, and then I might kind of get myself in trouble.
Never stop.
Yeah. Okay. These are two short poems on the same page that threaded. The thing that saved my life through the pandemic, I think, has been being a father. I have a 3-year-old. He's going to be 3 in June. And what I did during the pandemic, I decided that I'd have to do something since everything's closed down. And having a young child made it easy for me because I knew exactly what I had to do to take care of the child. And as a single parent, they had no choice. But the thing also I did was I had an elimination diet. And the first thing I eliminated was the news. Mm-hmm. And it was life-changing. I mean, I listen to everybody now. I just listen, whatever side, whatever they're talking about, just without any bias or any kind of, I just listen. It's great. It's great for poetry. It's great for your heart and no anxiety because the media, and I worked for the media. I mean, there's a lot of division and that's just what happens anyway. And it's a business. It's like show business. It's like anything else. But what I did, from my experience, doesn't work for everybody. I want to be informed. I want to read headlines and stuff. But I eliminated that anxiety, and it did wonders for me. I was able to just be like this good father as I can be for my son. And I produced a lot of work. I produced poetry. I made an album. I painted. I walked with my son, and I'm a fisherman, all those kinds of stuff. Stuff that I didn't get to do. It was too wrapped up in things. Mrs. Brickman. First memory, kindergarten, Mrs. Brickman. Show and tell, the Tommy Agee baseball card. Holding it up like a medallion, kids smiling, Agee smiling. My mom didn't smile. Later caught chewing gum. Mrs. Brickman grabs collar and shoves me to the corner. Facing the wall, alone, trembling, hands in pockets, searching for Tommy Agee, my friend in the baseball card. Mrs. Brickman grabs collar and twists it. Is this what you're looking for? She holds up the card like a medallion. Then she rips it in half. Again and again and again. And throws the pieces at me. First memory. Kindergarten. Mrs. Brickman. This is I had great teachers growing up. Mrs. Brigham was not one of them. I had great teachers, and my brother was a school teacher, and my sister and sister-in-law teach special ed, and they have been in business a long time, and family. It's like growing up family of educators, you know, they're the unsung heroes in this country. So I salute all teachers that are here, and I thank them for getting me to this point. Thank you again, appreciate it.
Thank you, Frank. Wasn't he amazing? Let's hear it again for Frank. And Frank, for the record, Frank, I'm talking to you. For the record, your new poems are breathtakingly beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's have a round of applause for our three poets, Frank Messina, Megha Sood, and Reggie Gaines. And let's keep that applause going for a wonderful audience. You guys have been terrific. Now we need to continue for the Hoboken Historical Museum and Bob Foster for the reading in words, in poetry, in all this, and it's a grand hockey for teaching scholars. Let me end with a poem by a poet from Union City. It's by W.S. Merwin, and I believe he was poet laureate at some point. And this poem, which was written some time ago, sounds very prophetic, even though he's from Union City to us in Hoboken. It's called Before the Flood. Why did he promise me that we would build ourselves an ark all by ourselves out in back of the house on New York Avenue in Union City, New Jersey, to the singing of streetcars after the story of Noah, whom nobody believed about waters that would rise over everything? When I told my father I wanted us to build an ark of our own there in the backyard under the kitchen, could we do that? He told me that we could. I want to, I said, and will we? He promised me that we would. Why did he promise me that? I wanted us to start then. Nobody will believe us. I said, we are building an ark because the rains are coming, and that was true. Nobody ever believed we would build an ark there. Nobody would believe that the waters were coming. The waters were coming. W.S. Merwin. Thank you, everyone. Oh, one last thing, always, this is a free event, as you know, but the Hoboken Museum always welcomes donations. There's a donation box out back.
And let's not forget who curated this event. He always does a great poet-like job. Let's thank Danny Schott. Danny is our poet laureate, and we say he's our poet in residence. And we're just so appreciative that we had a great audience today. And to me, doing these events, doing the poet events, is sort of like returning to normal. And it's very important to kind of recenter, recalibrate, and that's how I feel today. Thanks again, Danny. Thank you, poets.
I'm the folk, it's fine. And broadcast.